Hello, everyone. So today we have a special spot that I found. It's a small floating platform at a local botanical garden. And it's very serene. I have, let's see, today, a book called Letters to Milena by Kafka, Franz Kafka. He was the author of The Metamorphosis, which is the story of a man who wakes up one morning as a insect, pretty much a cockroach. Do I need these on? Yeah. And Letters to Milena is, I'll read the back, but it's basically letters from Kafka to Milena, who was a translator for his early works, a Czech writer. I began to run as fast as I could, and always with the thought, if only I could take her with me. Her, for Kafka, was Milena Jasenska, a young Czech writer whose acquaintance he made at the beginning of 1920 when she had completed the translation of some of his stories. An exchange of letters began. Soon an intimate friendship developed between the 38-year-old Kafka and the gifted, unhappily married woman of 24. The letters to Milena are a chronicle of Kafka's love over a period of the 2 years, from the first intense weeks of happiness to the final ones of relinquishment and despair. In the letters, we find Kafka living in the frightful limbo between dream and reality, light and darkness, good and evil. His was a world of longing without fulfillment. Milena understood him well, but she was perhaps too healthy, too strong-willed, too independent to follow her lover into the abyss which he inhabited. Sometimes, Kafka wrote, I believe that I understand the fall from grace as no other person. Franz Kafka died in 1924. Milena preserved his letters. In 1939, shortly after the Germans occupied Prague, she entrusted the letters to the care of her friend, Willy Haas, the editor of this volume. Milena died in 1944 in a German concentration camp. Unfortunately, her own letters to Kafka were not preserved. So, I don't know, some people might come by here and check out the view, so hopefully they don't mind being on the tube. So I'm going to read some of that, and then I guess part of the topic that I wanted to discuss was happiness, being content, and theories about that, experiences about that, etc. And then I will read a poem, which I published to my Substack quite a while ago, but otherwise, I'm just going to sit under this nice tree with the nice moss drooping down from it. There's a magnolia behind, and this, I believe, is a big oak. But the moss is very nice. There was a even larger tree back there with a lot more moss on it. And I was going to pick that location, and I sat down under it and felt something on my neck and brushed it off, and then I looked down and there was an ant that was like an inch long on my shirt. So I started freaking out a little bit because I couldn't tell if they were stinging ants. But anyways, I looked down and there were tens of hundreds of them. Not really, but there were the ground was moving. So I got up and moved. And here we are. I found an even cooler spot. I guess the garden wraps all the way around back. So I see people walking over there. Alright. The poem is entitled Alien Ontology. I lay in the hammock, pondering, noticing the aroma of the mycelium. I observe my brown widow paranoia and perceived sense of protection in active engagement. Under the spell of the sensuous, a revisiting of a past idea fizzles to the forefront of awareness. What a massive theme and sector of interest is that of the alien. The bulbous-headed, shark-skinned body with beady eyes, or in a political fashion, the human inhabiting another section of the same whole. Largely something which we have convinced ourselves that we do not understand, requiring also of the ideal that we perhaps fully, or to a threshold, understand our nature enough to be capable of missing that of another. The irony is the presence of the interest in discovery, in presupposition that coming to an understanding will be the missing piece of the puzzle. Come to view your searching for aliens outside of you is equally per a rejection of the alien within. Translate the English word into behavioral display of fear. Could the seeking of alien life be the equivalent of a just below the surface search for God? If I get over the illusion of knowledge of myself, others, or any element of the world as being achieved, there is indeed no reason to search. You, I, the widow, and her egg sac are as alien as it gets. Madness is abundant in looking for that which is right in front of my face. Spread the word, for contact has long since been established. So that one kind of speaks for itself, but it's basically about how there is a natural tendency in life to alienize things which we do not understand, which in reality is everything to some extent. As in, we are strangers to ourselves, we are strangers to others, and realistically, it seems that life is a consistent discovery. It's a constant process of discovery, and I guess discovery is equivalent to coming to know by experience, but knowing something by experience is not necessarily the same as knowing the origins of something or understanding the origins of something. And since becoming is a process of life, we come to know ourselves and others as they have become and as we have become, and we continue to become, so that version that we learn of ourselves is one that is somewhat fleeting, and it can be fleeting, doesn't have to be. I guess I think of people referring to those who are stuck in their ways. And I think to myself, it's kind of ironic how that's usually attributed to negative things. Move this guy up. Like that person stuck in his ways, her ways, they will never change. It's almost as if we understand that change is supposed to happen, and then when it doesn't match with our understanding of how life works. I think the quote that comes to mind is, "The only thing permanent in life is change." This spot is very, very peaceful and relaxing. It's like this tree serves as a perfect little canopy for this platform. I don't have much of this journal left to fill, and I got a couple of new ones ready to go. So I'm excited to start filling up another one. I have not been writing as much as I would like to. I've been kind of struggling with a lack of creative energy. And I think it's in part due to maybe an overabundance of consumption of content and other created items, like the new season of Black Mirror came out, and while I don't have any streaming services and I'm not really about watching TV, Black Mirror is one that I've always liked because of how true to life and accurate it feels. And it's very concerning / depressing. So I think, although I like it for its authenticity and seeming accuracy, it does kind of concern me how the reason why I like it is because of how accurate it is, even though it feels extremely messed up. So I've been watching that. I watched I think all of the new ones. And went back to watch a couple of the ones that I hadn't seen before. Yeah, some of them are stomach churning. So, this concept of happiness is one that I'm about 35 pages into this book, and I guess I didn't pay close enough attention to the title, but it's entitled Letters to Milena, not letters between myself and Milena. So it's literally only his letters to her, and as it said on the back, her letters were not preserved. So that being said, all of these letters kind of require contextual interpretation. There's not any context as to what they're talking about, except for his side. So it's kind of a look into his thought process, his mind, etc. And I have not read anything else by him yet, so this is probably a weird one to start with. If I had to take a guess, this would be the sort of book that someone would read after, reading some of the individual's actual works instead of just a volume of letters that they wrote. But I have an open mind, and I'm, I guess, doing things such as this to contribute to having an open mind. I think that's kind of how it works. I don't think one just says, I have an open mind, and they have an open mind. I think that you kind of have to put it into practice. So, one of the themes that has so far come up has been fear, definitely, identity. He's described his perceived identity of Milena in a couple of the letters, particularly tied to language, because she's the translator of his stories, of some of his stories. So he requested that she write to him in Czech language instead of in German, which is his language, because although she can write in German, he says that he feels like the majority of her identity is contained in her using Czech language instead, because it's the language she's been using for her whole life, not only German, after the point that she learned it and put it into practice. So there's that. What else? Random musings. I don't know. I guess these letters kind of show an interest in discovery and learning, primarily about oneself and another. I think out of a place of curiosity. And I try to put myself into this situation, which began in 1924. Well, I guess he died 4 years after meeting her. Wow, so he only lived to be 42 years old. I didn't know that. But yeah, I mean, I think back to the history that I know of 1920s, and I mean, I know that the Roaring Twenties began in America, and I guess probably the decade or two leading up to the Second World War. So I guess it was probably a time of abundance of some sort, in some sense. And then Milena died in a concentration camp in 1944. So, I'll read a couple of passages. kind of a strange sounding bird. Something back there. One thing that seems clear to me from this so far is that they wrote, maybe not they, but he at least wrote a lot of letters to her. He's referring here to how, by his calculations, there are 5 letters at one time on the way to her. And I'm sure that the mail moved slower in those days, but 5 at a time. I presume that he had a good bit of free time on his hands. It sounds like she was not writing back quite as many. When will someone finally come and straighten out this topsy-turvy world? By day, one walks around with a burned-out head. There are beautiful ruins everywhere here on the mountains, and one feels one ought to become as beautiful, too, in bed, however one gets, instead of sleep, the best ideas. Today, for instance, it occurred to me, in addition to yesterday's suggestion, that you could spend the summer with Stasa, of whom you wrote that she is in the country. Yesterday, I made the silly remark that there might be months when the money wouldn't be sufficient. This is nonsense. It will always be sufficient. Hello, buddy. There's a carpenter bee looking for some wood to eat. My dad always loved those things. Holes in the deck. There's some geese that just landed. quite interesting. The prose and the language is so intricate and elegant, but the guy seems loony. I don't know, it's kind of fun. Let's go, I'll show you the other tree I was talking about. And the rest of it. Otherwise, next week, I'm going to make a video about the next book, which I've started, and it's called Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon. It's quite a cool spot. Oh. There are people across the way. I'll show you the other tree that I was going to post up at. The one with the ants. It's this guy right here. It's quite something. There's like a lightning cable tied to it. Honestly, really want to climb it. It's pretty wild. Anyways, I'll see you all next week. Have a great one.